Oh, come on. I thought this was about electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, and gravity. That's not what this is about? Crap. Hey gang, welcome to day 63 of the year 2016 at magicreview.com, where we are not talking about physics, darn it. Many of you don't know, but I actually have, we'll call it a quasi-degree in physics. In the Navy, I was a nuclear machinist mate, which means that I worked on the nuclear power plant and all of the systems in the engine room that are driven by the power plant. And so I had some pretty intense nuclear training and chemical chemistry training in the Navy. The 6-month program is like the equivalent of like a 4-year degree, just crammed into 6 months, man. It was intense. Anyway, enough about that. I haven't used that stuff for 20 years, but today we're looking at a different kind of string theory by Vince Mendoza. What's the effect? Well, they're calling it gypsy thread, which I don't know how you officially define the effect gypsy thread, because typically gypsy thread is A, done with thread, and B, it's, you break the pieces, you ball them up, and then restore, right? Well, this is a cut and restored string, and so it has a lot of similarities to gypsy thread, so I don't know if it's officially a gypsy thread effect, but semantics aside, it is a cut and restored, very visual, by the way, cut and restored string, or this little twiny stuff here. So, that's the effect. The method. Well, the good, the bad, and the ugly, folks. The basic fundamental principle behind this is old as the hills. I'm pretty sure that this method is actually in Tarbell, where it's just the restoration of 2 pieces of string, or it's a twine is kind of what you need. This is some fine twine, but it is a type of twine. I don't know, I'm not a string guy. Anyway, so if you're familiar with that principle where you hold up what's clearly looks like 2 pieces of string, and then immediately you pull them and it's 1 piece, that's the method for this. It's the same basic idea, except like to the nth degree, where, using that old method, which I'm not going to expose if you don't know it, even if it's not in Tarbell, it's old enough to have been in Tarbell. But using that method, but rather than being able to show that it's like 2 strings, you're showing that it's like, 8 or 9 pieces or whatever. So that's part 1 of the method. The other thing that I don't believe was in the original with just the 2 pieces was they never actually saw you cut the rope. You just started with those two individual strands. Whereas in this one, you actually do get to legitimately cut the string, and then you do a little. It's the thing that you use to turn the light on and off, in the room. That little. Okay, it's a switch. All right, you have to do a switch. Anyway, so here's the thing, guys. I don't have a problem with switches. But the question is, where are you getting the switched in or out item from? I'll tell you. From the Spectator. Yeah. It depends on the spectators wearing the right clothing. So he talks about you don't want somebody with a what did he say? Synthetic fabric. Then he said like a polyblend or a rayon. They can't be wearing that kind of shirt. I'm not making this up. This is not like an April Fool's joke here, guys. This is for real. So, first of all, the shirt I'm wearing, I have no idea what it's made out of. And I'm wearing it. It's touching my body. I have no idea what it's made out of. My t-shirt, no idea what it's made out of. I can look at the tag and I can tell. Well, so there's no way I'm going to be able to look at somebody and know what material they're wearing. Okay? B, here's how he tells you to tell. He says that you rub their back. Yes, I wish I had a little mannequin doll so I could show you. but just behind their back here, kind of not on the shoulder, well, kind of in the shoulder blade back area, you rub their back to feel the material. So how does this work? You rub their back and then go, oh, never mind, I'm going to use this guy over here, and then you rub his back, and you're like, oh, never mind, I'm going to use your wife, and then you rub her back. I mean, how does this even work? Secondly, so let's just say that they have the right material on their shirt. It is a good switch. I mean, it really is. The string sticks to them, right? But let's say that it sticks to them just fine, and they wore the right clothing, and you don't have to mess around with, let's even say you get past the rubbing their back part. The switch is good. It's very good, and they won't feel it, okay? They won't feel you do it, and they teach very in-depth how to do the switch without them, without it feel like you're feeling them up and grabbing stuff off of their back. So it's very clever in that sense. So the other part of the method, making the little gimmick that looks like multiple strands of thread, it's a pain in the butt. It takes like 10 or 15 minutes to make just one set, and it's going to be the longest 10 or 15 minutes of your life. And it's a little bit of a pain, but once you get it made, it's set. He recommends sitting down and making a batch of them, like maybe 10 or 15 of them. And he shows you a clever, simple way to sort of transport them and carry them and everything. So, I'm not opposed to a method being a pain in the butt. I imagine that, I think it's Copperfield who created the illusion where you've severed your top half of your body and your lower half of your body's walking around and your upper half's carrying your legs or whatever. I imagine that the setup for that's kind of a pain in the butt. I have no clue how that illusion works, but I imagine it's not an easy thing. And it's not like instant reset necessarily and that kind of stuff. So I'm not opposed to stuff that isn't an instant reset. And I'm not even opposed necessarily to that, you have to use the spectator's back or whatever. I kind of have a little bit of an issue with that because of the way you have to deal with finding out if they're wearing the right shirt. But don't hear that just because there's no easy reset or whatever, therefore it's a bad method, because there's plenty of methods where that's not an issue, where it is hard to reset, but it's still a good product or whatever. The problem, though, with this spectator thing is, I mean, come on, really? Also, he talks about doing this in his stand-up show, or his parlor-ish show. So how does that work? I mean, you bring a volunteer up on stage, and you feel her up, and you're like, oh, sorry, you foolishly wore rayon today. That's assuming that you can even figure out what material it is by touching her. Or what are you going to do, look down her shirt in the back and look at the tag? Then you send her back to her seat and go, send up your friend. I think she's wearing the right clothing. You bring her up and feel her up, and, oh, luckily it is the right clothing. To me, that's just stupid. So his solution, which is actually not a bad solution, one of two things. Either you get custom-made like seat covers to put on the back of the chair. If you're doing a parlor or stand-up kind of a show, I think that's a relatively reasonable solution. But that is an investment you're going to have to make. The other thing is he says to have your own suit coat or whatever made of that material and just put it on the back of the chair. And then you're doing the switch off of the chair, not the person's back. Okay, that's fine for your parlor kind of a show. When we get into the ad copy, we're going to see some other problems with that. But I've given you the basic. I mean, I've pretty much exposed the whole thing here, and I'm not trying to be a a-hole here and expose the effect, but I just want to make sure you understand what's going on here. I think that the suit coat on the chair and or the seat cover are legitimate methods. I think those are both legitimate methods. The other thing, though, sorry, stuff like this just drives me crazy. He multiple times in the video, he's made it a point of saying that the spectator, when they sit down, they cannot lean back in the chair. They have to be sitting forward so that there's a little bit of gap behind their rear end on the chair. And he describes it as basically like a shelf behind them. So in other words, they're sitting not quite on the edge of their seat, but, on the front half of their seat. And the reason for this is in case the string falls off of their back. It'll land on the chair, not on the floor. So how is that better? I'd almost think it's better if it landed on the floor. So how does this play out? They're sitting there, you load the thing on their back, and then it falls off onto the chair. What do you say to her? Excuse me while I reach under your butt and grab the string? Even if you don't say anything, the fact that you're reaching down onto the chair in front of your whole audience that's watching this effect makes no sense. Awkward to say the least. And I imagine the audience is going to go, what is he doing with his hand behind her on her seat? So, just weird. He did talk about if it does happen to fall on the floor, how do you deal with it? Also, he talks about you have to have somebody that's shorter than you. And he says he's a short guy. I can't remember how tall he said he was, but generally speaking, he'll pick a woman because generally speaking, I'm not being sexist here, but generally speaking, most women are shorter than most men. That was his thinking on that. So generally, he'll pick a woman. And part of the reason why is because it's awkward if the guy is taller than you and you're reaching up here to put something on his back or whatever. So if you're bringing somebody who's seated and they stand up and they're too tall, what do you do? Oh, never mind, you're too tall for this trick. Sit down, get your neighbor, and hope that when you feel their neighbor up, they're the right height and they're the right material on their clothing. So again, all signs point to having them seated with your jacket or seat cover on the chair. Which means this is more geared for a stand-up or parlor stage-ish type of show. And this would work on stage. I mean, this string can be seen from quite a good distance. So, okay, fine. Now I've covered everything I can think of about method. Let's move on to add copy integrity. One of the things they say is that it's great for strolling. Really? Okay. How does that work? Excuse me, sir, I'm the magician. I'd like to feel up your wife and see if she's wearing the proper clothing. And if she's not, then I'm going to feel up your wife's sister here at the table with you, or you, sir, or your daughter, or whoever's next. And then I'm going to tell her to scoot forward 5 or 6 inches in her chair in case I have to reach down behind her butt. I mean, this makes no sense as strolling whatsoever. Further, if, like any restaurant, situation, or any strolling thing, cocktail party where they're all standing, people will see the person's back. Maybe not the people you're performing for, but the group next to them will. So this doesn't feel like it's good for strolling. Secondly, you have to dedicate one pocket to the bundle, the switched-in bundle. You can't put anything else in there because he says if you do, stuff will get tangled and whatever. And so, yeah, to manage that little bundle you're going to switch in, you got to keep that pocket empty other than the bundle. And then you're going to have in another pocket somewhere your little packet of bundles that are sort of a little bit more protected, but you got to carry that somewhere. Plus, you have to carry a piece of string that's about the length of your arm span, the one that's going to be getting cut up during the performance. So, for every performance, you ruin one length of string, and you render one switched-in bundle unusable until you go home and reset everything. So you can only do as many performances as you can carry pre-made bundles of string that you've done, which is fine. I mean, if you're going to do the trick maybe 10, 15 times, that's reasonable. But again, in a strolling environment, it just doesn't make sense with the different things going on with the method. Further, in his explanation, Vince Mendoza says I don't do this strolling. I wonder why. Or he may have said, I only do it in my stand-up act or something like that. But there's something he said that, to me, made it clear, like, yeah, he doesn't do this strolling. So that's when the ad copy says this is perfect for strolling, I believe is the word they use. Let me look and see what they say. It says good for strolling. No, it's not. I would disagree with that. Now, you know pretty much everything I know about the method. Maybe you would disagree with me, and that's fine. But now you know what's going on. Next, it claims, well, actually, this isn't next. This is an earlier claim in the ad copy, but it claims that the best moments, plural, happen in the spectator's hands. Well, there's only 2 moments per se, and that's the moment where you cut the string and then the moment where you restore the string. And yes, the spectator can cut the strings, and yes, the restoration happens in their hand, but you cutting the string actually adds, I think, makes it a little bit more presentationally interesting. If you watched Eric Jones's presentation, that's an interesting presentation. I think most people would agree. It's a little slow. That doesn't affect the star rating, by the way. But I think that's a decent presentation. Having the spectator do the cutting in that scenario, I don't think would be very good. So I don't know that the best moments, maybe the best moment happens in the spectator's hands. Also, when they cut them, they have to put them on the table because you have to gather them up and do the switch. So, anyway, looking further into the ad copy here. Let's see, what does it say? Yeah, okay, so I was just clarifying there that don't be led to believe that they can cut them and then immediately restore them. You got to do the switch, right? Okay, then it says simple setup. Okay, simple setup. I don't think I need to say anything about that. It says simple setup and preloading makes strolling and performing easy. I'm not even sure what they mean by that. The preloading, I'm assuming they mean throwing the thing on the spectator's back. The simple setup, what, the 20 minutes it takes to, or 15 minutes it takes to make the thing, and then, the couple hours it takes if you're going to be doing a strolling, and then, having to have the right clothing. I don't know that this is simple, guys, but it's relative. If you know what's happening there, maybe you agree that that's simple. I don't know. Yeah, again, there's twice where they say it's a simple setup. I don't know what's going on there. All right, moving on to. By the way, go read the written review. This, often the video is sufficient, but this one's already 20 minutes long, and I'm not even close to being done. Go read the written review. Okay, there's great detail in there, but. The product quality. Yeah, the string's great. It's going to last you probably, just by looking at the length of it, probably, I wrote 20 to 30 performances on the written review, but I'm looking at this again, and it's probably less than that. Maybe 15 to 20. Because every performance, you do destroy a good, however tall you are, basically 6 feet of string. And eventually you'll get down to, you don't destroy the freshly unraveled gimmicked one or whatever, but you have to, eventually you will, because you'll run out of string to cut. So I don't know, but it'll last you a fair amount. They should have told you where to get this. This is pretty common stuff. They should have just given you some details about what kind of string it is and where, craft stores or places you could get it. You can get this kind of stuff at Walmart, but just knowing exactly what kind it is would have been helpful. They do kind of mention it, but maybe it just wasn't enough to where I could go into Walmart and go, yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So, anyway, probably they're trying to sell refills. I don't know. But I think you'll be okay. You'll probably be able to find this once you run out. So just before you run out, go to Walmart and compare this, or whatever your craft store is, or whatever. Next, in the teaching was pretty good, actually. It's pretty in-depth. And Eric Jones and Vince Mendoza were together teaching it. There's some weird stuff, though. Like, for one, it felt like, I don't know if it was filmed out of order, the explanation, but it was cut out of order. They were constantly referring to stuff that hadn't happened yet, and it just felt like it was put together in the wrong order. I know stuff isn't always filmed in order, but when you're learning something and they're referring back to something you should already know that hasn't happened yet, that's confusing. Secondly, they kept referring to Vince Mendoza's performance of it. There is no performance of Vince Mendoza doing this on the DVD anywhere. Or if it is, it's hidden somewhere, like in an Easter egg or something like that. I don't know. The only performance you got was the one that you basically saw that on the trailer by Eric Jones. Secondly, I love Eric Jones, guys. I do. He's got some beautiful magic. I own a couple of his products. But my brother, Eric, please, grow up, dude. Everything that Vince said, Eric turned into some sort of sexual innuendo. And he kept interrupting the flow of the explanations, telling Vince, oh, don't say that because, watch your phrasing is what he kept saying to him. And half the time Vince would stop and think about what he just said, and then he'd chuckle because he got the joke or whatever. And Eric kept doing that. I mean, way too many times. Maybe one time it might have been funny if you're into that kind of humor. But after a while, I'm not exaggerating, Vince got to the point where he was pausing and hesitating and clearly rewording stuff on the fly because he was afraid Eric Jones was going to turn it into some little, prepubescent humor. It just was stupid and immature. But if you think that's funny, fine. But my problem isn't that it was funny or not funny or offensive or not offensive. My problem is Eric kept doing it and interrupting the flow of the teaching. That was just kind of frustrating. Let's see. Let me just look here. I've already covered the whole business about getting the string off of her butt. Yeah, I think I'm going to let you guys read the written to find any other mistakes or stuff that I've mentioned. Here's the thing. Putting aside the price is what, $35? Getting the DVD and pretty in-depth training and the string, that's not a bad price, particularly if you like the effect. Particularly if you see a place where you can use it in your show and you don't mind having to put a cover on the seat or something. And if you have the venue for this, then who am I to tell you not to buy it? But when you consider all of the elements put together and there's just too many problems with this product, so it's hard for me to give this a total gem rating. So I went with Grubble, 2.5 stars, stone status of Grubble. There is gem. I do think that this, the method is good. I think it's a legitimate method in the right setting. I think that the ad copy got some big problems with it. I think there was a few problems with the teaching. And I think there are some problems with some aspects of the method, or some versions of the method, I should say. So, all in all, putting all that together, 2.5 stars, stone status of gem. I don't know. This is one I was kind of torn on because part of me, I'm sure you can sense that I'm feeling the emotion of some of the stuff that was annoying me. So I'm trying to look at it objectively, and I think that that's a fair rating. Feel free to use my own rating criteria against me and tell me that I'm wrong, and I'll change the rating. I'm happy to. Anyway, that's it for this one, folks. Time to subscribe by clicking that button if it's there. Thumbs up, like, share the video, and listen to the random iTunes song of the moment, which is, this one comes up a lot, Billie Jean, which is appropriate because I think, well, sort of. Let me write that down. These videos are not filmed. I'm behind. So I'm filming a whole bunch of videos and I'm going to backdate them. But the day I'm filming is actually the day after the 30th anniversary of the release of that song. But this video is actually supposed to have been released a week ago. So a little bit of future time travel weirdness there. Anyway, this video is getting too long. About to run out of space. So tune in tomorrow. Sort of, for day 64, where we look at Gonzo by Jose LaQuest. Until then, folks, thanks for watching. Peace out.